Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Founding Without Funding podcast. Today, we are going to go into episode 4 here, and we're going to be talking about sell it before you build it. And this is a concept that we've touched on a little bit throughout the last couple of podcasts, and we'll go ahead and go a little bit more in depth to it today. So, last episode, we talked about sell before you buy. This is essentially similar to that, but really sell before you build. What we mean is that you need to get the minimum viable product out there and get some sales before building too deep. So let's talk about what the MVP is, the minimum viable product. This is essentially what you can do to build a product or service enough for somebody to purchase it without having to necessarily do the full thing or the most in-depth version of what you're looking to do as your final product. It doesn't necessarily need to be the final product, right? So that's what we mean when we say sell before you build, is to get something out there, get it in front of people and sell it before you build the entire back end. Because what can happen is you could spend days, weeks, months, years building out a full product, full service, and then nobody really buys it. So as we've talked about before, you need to be able to be flexible. You need to be able to be able to make the moves you need to move and be able to change products, services, and be able to essentially go after what works. And if you spend all your time building something that doesn't work, then that's not going to work out well for you. So we want to get the MVP out, the minimum viable product, to be able to get it in front of customers and see if they are going to purchase it. Now, you could go years trying to get an idea out there or a product or a service, and then when you get it out to the market, nobody purchases it. And so that's why it's important to get it out there first before you spend too much time on it, whether that means time dwelling on it and thinking about it and hoping for it, or whether that means time actually building it. The first thing you need to do is see if the market responds to it. So has the market purchased it? Is the market interested? And here's the thing, if you want to build something great, then you should be doing this anyways, because you want to get the most basic version of your product out there so that you can get feedback from people. And it's not just feedback from customers. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sell a bunch of product to get that feedback. What it means is that you get people in the door, you get people interested, you get people on clicking on ads, you get people in your funnel, and that way you can have communication with them. You're going to start seeing people emailing back, asking certain questions, and now hey, I need to make sure that I have this because customers keep asking if this includes this feature. And so not only is it important for you to get it out there first to see if it works, but if it does work, it's important to make it even better by taking that information from the customers and actually being able to use it to create something a little bit better there while you're building it up. So the problem with just building things in the dark is that, again, you can come up with all these different ways you think you're going to do things, but then reality hits you in the face. And reality is the marketplace. I love Jim Rohn. He's one of my favorite motivational speakers, definitely, from the past era. But Jim Rohn, if you want some inspiration, definitely look him up. And he's amazing. And one of the things he said is the marketplace, which is called reality, is what determines everything. Right? So when you're building something in the dark and you're not getting it out there to the people, you're not dealing in reality. The marketplace is reality. And so the quicker you can get that idea or that business or that product or that service in front of the marketplace and into the marketplace, then the sooner you can either see if it works or see what needs to change for it to work, right? You don't want to go through creating the idea and the logo and the website and the product and the service, and then spending tons of time on building out that product or service, and then it's crickets, right? And the marketplace, which is actually reality, smacks you in the face and lets you know that this is not going to work. And so again, tons of different things that you can do to get it out there. Obviously, in today's age, the easiest way is to package it up in some kind of form, put it on some kind of landing page or funnel, and get it out there using ads. Obviously, meta ads are the easiest. We've talked about this before, how you have the most powerful advertising tool in the history of mankind in your hands at all times for free without needing experts. There's plenty of courses and classes you can take on how to effectively use meta ads, including some of the stuff that we have as well. And then there's also companies that can do it for you. My company, your digital business partner, we can set up your entire company and also set up your entire ads and funnel and flow and all that kind of good stuff. So there's no excuse not to be able to do this. We're talking about hundreds of dollars here, as opposed to what used to be tens, 20s, or hundreds of thousands to launch a new product or service and get feedback on it. That used to take a lot, and now it's very easy. It can be done in a matter of days from your house, all by yourself, or with a little bit of help if you want somebody to streamline it for you. Or again, you could go through courses and classes and get even better at it yourself. So there's no excuse not to get this market or this idea out into the marketplace. You got to put your product or service in front of people before you build it out too much. The key is to get that MVP, the minimal viable product. Get it out there, get it in front of people, and not only see if you get sales, but get feedback on the sales you get and get feedback on the sales that you don't get, which is just as important. And again, reaching out to people, speaking to them is always great, but you're naturally going to see a huge amount of feedback if you just get people into that funnel. If you're funneling them in correctly, and you're advertising, you're getting them in there, you're putting them through the funnel correctly, at the end of the day, they're going to start responding, whether they're responding to the automated texts that are going out when they sign up, or the automated emails, or they're responding to the phone calls. I definitely recommend you pick up the phone and give them a call. One of the things that changed my business was making sure that we called everyone. So, this was probably 15 years ago or something like that. One of my friends, Cameron, shout out to Cam. He's, the ultimate salesperson. He's amazing, great business person, and one of my friends from high school. And he came to our office in Miami. He's from Portland, where I'm from, and he came to visit. And we told him how everything works and what we were doing, and that, we were running ads and getting, thousands of people a day, and we were emailing them and starting to text them and all that kind of good stuff. And he was like, "You're not calling them?" And this person, he does millions and millions in sales. He is one of the best salespeople in the country. And we were like, "Well, we're not actually calling them, but we're sending them all this information." And he was like, "You have to call them. You have to touch everyone. How do you guys have all these customers and you're not giving them a call?" Because most businesses don't have the customers to call in the first place, right? That's the hardest part. But here we were a well-oiled machine, and we were getting all kinds of customers, hundreds and hundreds per day, coming through the door, so to speak, coming through the funnel online, and we weren't actually calling them. And so he said, "You have to call everyone. You got to. You just got to get on the phone and call them all." And so we ended up, obviously getting on the phone ourselves, but then we ended up building out a team. And so we went from maybe like 4 employees to like 12, because it took more people to call. Nowadays, I would probably use a tool like Upwork to get some virtual assistants to make those calls. That's a great way to do it. There's a lot of great callers on Upwork, and that's a great system to use. But any kind of virtual assistants nowadays, again, it just comes down to being so easy. The best time in history to create a business where you can get a minimal viable product out there in front of people instantly, get people in the door, and then you could even have virtual assistants call them, because obviously you're going to want to call, text, and email every single person. And again, shout out to Cameron, because it changed our business. We, from then on, every business we've done, we've known you got to reach out, you got to call them. No matter how many emails or text messages that you send, you still got to call them. Now, nowadays it's changed to people really don't want to be on the phone even more, but there's still something about calling people. So I want to recommend everybody really take that to heart, that I know you may not like to be called, right? None of us like to answer the phone typically. Some of us even have it on to where it blocks unknown numbers, but there is still something to making that call. There's also something to leaving the voicemail. But even more so than the voicemail, even if they don't answer, the fact is you're kind of completing that trifecta. And that trifecta is getting them a call and a text, or excuse me, a text and an email immediately, right? So you should have it set up and automated. If you don't, we can help you with that, but you should have it automated to where as soon as they click on an ad, they get a text and an email from you with all the information of what you're trying to sell them. And then, hopefully sooner than later, but eventually, whether it's that day or the next day, you need to follow up with a call. Now, most people are not going to answer. That's not that bad of a thing. The people who do answer, it's great because you're going to be able to speak to them and get feedback. And one of the things that you'll notice is that a lot of them didn't, say they didn't receive the email or the text, or just don't remember the email or the text. And so it's amazing how many, ads people click on, and then they either kind of forget about it, or they, maybe they say on the phone to you that they forgot about it because they don't really remember everything about it. So, that's why it's very important to pick up the phone and get back to the top of their mind, even if they did get it and they're kind of just, I don't want to say lying, but they're kind of just pushing it off. It puts back at top of mind. Now, leaving a voicemail is great because people don't usually get voicemails, right? Like when people we know call us, they don't leave voicemails. They would just send us a text. And so it's quite noticeable when you have to go into your voicemail and listen to one. But here's the thing. The majority of the people aren't going to answer. But what it does is it makes it real. So when you're having somebody click on an ad and they do not know you, so we're talking about the marketplace again, right? People that do not know you, we're getting our offer out there in front of them. When somebody clicks on one of your ads and they don't know you, they don't know if you're a real person. They don't know if you're a real company. Again, you could be spending $1 a day on ads and be a essentially fly-by-night company, or a company that doesn't fulfill what they're supposed to. And so it's important to make sure that you establish that you're real. And that's what I mean about the trifecta, is that email and text that they get immediately when clicking on the ad is all automated, which shows some form of professionalism, right? If you were just a person trying to kind of scheme on people, you wouldn't have these tools set up to automatically text and email them as soon as they, click on the ad instantaneously. Again, there's all kinds of ways that you can do that. That's definitely what you should have set up. If you have a product or service you're trying to sell, we can help you do that at yourdigitalbusinesspartner.com if you want us to do that for you. But it's definitely something that needs to be happening. And when you combine that text message and that email that they get instantly, and they say, oh, it's a professional company, it does all this instant stuff, then you combine that with a phone call saying, hey, there's a real person here. And even if it's a virtual assistant, it's still a real person calling them. So what I've found is even when people don't answer the phone, what it does is it puts a certain amount of legitimacy there, to where now they'll pay more attention to the text and the email simply because you called. And especially if they get the voicemail. And then they'll say, oh, this was a real person. This wasn't just a company sending me, automated info that doesn't care, or, whatever the case is. They're saying, oh, okay, this is a real person. I got the call, I got the email, I got the text immediately. And then they had somebody follow up and call me, and, maybe they didn't answer, maybe they left a message, but they say, okay, this is a real person. So not only are you bringing yourself top of mind again, but you're putting a more legitimate kind of face to it. And that's why I say it is the trifecta. It's important to make sure that every lead comes in, not only gets sent an email and a text, but also gets called as well. And again, most people won't answer. And to tell you the truth, that's not that bad of a thing, because as long as you have an auto dialer set up, then it doesn't take the employee that long to to call the list, right? Especially if you're just starting, you only have a couple hundred calls to make. A person using an auto dialer can make 300 calls in a day, because the fact is 250 of them aren't going to answer. And especially if you have a system where you can drop the automated, voicemails. When somebody doesn't answer, you can press a button, it drops the voicemail and moves right on to the next call. You can call 300 people in a day, dropping messages to most of them. And then, maybe 50 people answer. A lot of them are going to just kind of hang up and say, no, not interested. And that's just how it is. And you just have to, go ahead and get through that. But the point here is that, especially if you're using an auto dialer, you can get through 300 calls in a day. So think about right now in your head, how many leads are you getting per day? And then, a virtual assistant, a good one to make good phone calls that speaks clear English, is probably about $8 an hour. And so if you only have 300 leads, in a day, then you're talking about just a full days of work for an 8 hour, an $8 an hour person. Now, if you only have 10, 20, 30 leads a day, you're talking about a tiny, tiny amount of money. You're talking about paying somebody for an hour or less. So you're talking about paying $8, $5 a day, whatever it is, to have somebody call all of your leads. And it's very important to understand too that a virtual assistant is fine to do those calls, because again, most of the people aren't going to answer. Now, the people that do answer, it's totally fine for the virtual assistant to just be checking in and saying, making sure you got the email and the text. Don't worry about thinking I have to train this virtual assistant to know everything about my business in order to let them on the phone with my customers. That's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of great virtual assistants out there. Again, Upwork is a great place to hire them because you can see their reviews and know that they're, a good person to hire before you hire them. And it handles the money kind of like an escrow. And I've actually been refunded when people did not do their job. Upwork actually refunds you if they see them manipulating the time or trying to claim that they worked more than they did. So it's definitely a good service. So when you're doing those calls, just remember that it doesn't have to be an expert at your business when you're first reaching out, right? It doesn't have to be somebody that is, they have to know the answer to every single question. That's not the case, right? You just need to make sure somebody gets on the phone and touches base with them, especially because, again, most of the people aren't going to answer anyways. You're just kind of trying to, complete that trifecta and make sure that you're reaching out to everybody in the correct way. Now, let's talk about, the risk of sell before you build. Same thing, or with sell before you buy. It's the same thing here. The risk is that you do not follow through with what you're trying to do, and this is 100% on you. So it's not a risk that you may incur. It's really a risk to your customer, and it's something that you need to make sure that you're doing correctly as an entrepreneur. You cannot put out an offer that is something that you cannot deliver. Right? So you got to do what you promised. You have to make sure that you sell it in a way that is ethical, and make sure that you have the actual capacity and ability to execute once somebody has purchased it. So while you don't necessarily need to have the full in-depth product or service, you definitely need to be able to immediately deliver that, or at least immediately deliver the MVP, the minimal viable product that you are advertising. So, you don't want to be scammy. You don't want to be schemy. There's plenty of money to be made in honest, legitimate ways, especially nowadays. And again, you can do this. You can sell before you buy or sell before you build, but you can't do it in a schemy type way. So keep that in mind too. Don't put any offers out there that are too good to be true, because it's probably too hard to do on your part. Right? So make sure that you're not, putting those type of things out there. Make sure you follow through with what you promised. Now, especially if it's a new product or service, it's very important that you figure out how you're going to execute it. If your first time doing it, there's a problem that comes up with that first customer, then give them something for free. I talked in one of the last episodes about how some of your clients that have the biggest problems can become your biggest clients and your biggest advertisers, and give you plenty of referrals. Because if you make it right, if you're available to them and you make it right to them, make it up to them, not only by doing what you were supposed to do and apologizing, but also going above and beyond that. So as long as you're doing that, then it should be okay. So if there is a problem with fulfilling that first person because you didn't quite have everything dialed in yet, then just make sure you go above and beyond for that customer if any problems came up. That's the big thing I would say, is that especially when you're in this process of selling something before it may be built out 10,000% all the way, make sure that you go above and beyond, especially for those first clients. If they're not getting exactly what they think they paid for, or maybe it's taking you longer to accomplish that, then you want to make sure that you make up for that. Because again, if you do that and go above and beyond, then not only will they be happy, but they're probably also going to, recommend that, right? So, Founding Without Funding, the book, is kind of a mini, playbook for this, as far as sell before you build it big, also sell before you buy, right? That's the story I talked about when I founded my first company and I essentially sold the service before I actually purchased it. And I was able to do that. And again, it changed my life. I wouldn't be anywhere that I am today without that one thing happening back when I was 15, when I was first starting in the business world. So, it's definitely something that you can do. It's something everyone can do, but it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done ethically, and it needs to be done in a way where if there are any mistakes or anything happens to where, you weren't prepared for something, so something goes wrong, you just need to go way above and beyond to make it right to your client. That's just what needs to happen. And when you do that, it actually turns out that people really respond well to it. And availability is a big thing too. It's not just making it up to them. It's being there to assure them that you're going to make it up to them, and then being there to tell them you did make it up to them, because people don't remember necessarily all of the details. They remember how you make them feel. Did you make them feel like you were genuinely sorry for any misunderstanding or any problems? Are you making them genuinely feel like you went above and beyond to help them out? And when they feel that way, people will tell other people and they trust you more. To tell you the truth, the customers who trust you the most are the customers who had something go wrong. You made it up to them, you went above and beyond, and they know, hey, I'm going to order from them always because I know that if something goes wrong, they'll be there to help me fix it, and they'll probably go above and beyond. So I'll probably get even more, than I paid for, right? So, just keep that in mind. So now let's go ahead and talk about, essentially once you kind of, build the MVP, the minimal viable product, again, you have to get it out there in front of people. So you're going to make some kind of website, some kind of landing page. You're going to make a sales funnel. You're going to hook up the automated text, the automated emails, all those type of things. There's classes and courses on how you can do it. We can do it for you at yourdigitalbusinesspartner.com and set that up for you as well. It's one of the things that one of my businesses does. And it's just important to put people through there, right? And we talked about this in a previous episode as well. You don't know whether your product's going to sell until you get it in front of the market, but you also need to make sure that you get it in front of the market enough. Just because you told some people, just because you posted on your Facebook or Instagram or whatever the case is, even if you posted a bunch of times, that doesn't actually mean that you got it in front of the marketplace. Now, again, the marketplace is strangers that don't know you, right? So you got to not only get it in front of more than just your Facebook and Instagram followers, because those people technically already know you, but you need to get it in front of enough people to have a good enough sample size. And you need to get it in front of them in the way that we talked about, which is get an ad in front of them or get them in your funnel, however you do. Make sure they instantly get the automated text in the email, then make sure they get followed up with a phone call. And then, of course, you're going to want to have them on drip campaigns in your CRM to make sure that they're being followed up with and make sure that it's being presented to them. I know most of you probably know the old saying that it takes somebody like 7 times to see an ad before they really, remember it or, want to go buy the product or service, excuse me. So it's just the same thing with this, right? Just because somebody clicked on an ad, that's just the very beginning of the process. You still have to instantly get the information in front of them, right? Speed to lead. So that's why we always hook up all the instant systems. So as soon as they click on that ad, there's a text message on their phone. The key in the text message is to have a link to where they can go purchase the product or service, right? Not just, hey, check your email for more information. It's, we sent you the information and here you can go here to proceed with the process and actually put the URL in the text, right? And so you have to do that instantly, speed to lead, to make sure that instantly they get that text and that email, and then you can give them a call. Now, some people can even set it up to where you can call them instantly. You can go that far if you want, where you can have virtual assistants pick up the phone right away. So there are systems you can put in place for that. And that's even, more effective, right? But at the end of the day, you got to at least have that automated email and that text to get the information in front of them immediately while they're interested, while they're paying attention. But again, 90% of them, it's kind of just going to go to the side and they're going to not really remember. And that's why it's important that you make those follow-up calls, the follow-up emails, the follow-up texts, and you should be exhausting every single way to get this in front of people before you can make the decision on whether it worked or not. and before you start building it out more. So this goes to the core of founding without funding is stop wasting your time building, stop wasting your time hoping, stop wasting your time on the back end when you really need to get out there on the front end. You really have to get it out in front of people before you start building it so big and before you start building it so detailed. So, sell it before you build it big. You can sell it before you buy it, but definitely with a product or service, a new product or service you're trying to get into the marketplace, sell it before you build it big. That way, you know that you're doing something that's going to sell. It doesn't do anybody any good to sit there and build out this product or service that nobody is ever going to buy. You're going to be broke, you're going to be out of time, and you're essentially going to be still at square one if you're just sitting there and building it. You could try to build it all day, build it as cool as possible, but if nobody knows about it, then nobody's going to buy it. Here's the other thing. You could also build out something that's super cool, the coolest thing possible, but nobody actually wants it in real life. So bringing it back to the beginning, when I talked about the quote from Jim Rohn, one of the best motivational speakers out there, is the marketplace, which is called reality, will slap you in the face and say that, hey, this looks great, it sounds great. Even people may think they want the product, but when you actually put it out there into the marketplace did not respond. And that's what we call reality. So one of the biggest things here of my book, my course, this podcast is stop waiting, but also stop building so big, right? So even if you're working hard, but your work is only on building the most perfect thing before you launch it, you need to stop building and start selling, because selling is all that really matters. Cash flow is king. Everything else is second to that. And if there is nobody willing to buy your product or service, even at its MVP, its minimal viable product stage, then it's not going to do you any good to build the best, greatest product or service ever, because you already know that the marketplace is not going to purchase it. Plus, a lot of the times the things you're building probably aren't even going to be shown on the front end. You might be building a lot of the back end to make it great, but they might not even be features that you're putting on the front end, right? So if you're going to build something and take the time to build something, a part of that product or service, make sure it's something that's shown on the website. Make sure it's one of those bullet points that's listed of this is what comes with the product or service. Because if you're building anything else besides just what to accomplish those bullet points you're putting on the sales page, then you're completely wasting your time. If you want to build more features or come up with more features and get them started to put on that bullet point of what they're getting to sell, that's one thing. But to be doing anything apart from what else can I give to the customer, and can I tell the customer they're going to get right now to get them to buy it? And maybe it's a feature you haven't even built yet, but you know you can. Again, that goes back to doing it ethically and not being, schemy or scammy. But it may be a feature that you can build and you can do, and maybe it even takes a little bit of money to do that, so that once somebody buys it, you can accomplish that. It's no problem. It's just going to take you a little bit of money. So, building those type of features, or even just coming up with those type of features and adding them to that bullet list, that menu, whatever it is that you're using to pitch people on that landing page, or what the website, that is not necessarily a waste of time. But what is a waste of time is building all of that before you're even showing it to customers, before you even put it up as a bullet point, right? You could make the craziest thing that costs you thousands of dollars, and you're like, hey, when I put this up on the menu, it's going to go crazy and they're going to love it. But at the end of the day, again, the market, which is called reality, might slap you in the face and say, hey, you just wasted all of your time building that and nobody's going to buy it. So the lesson for today: sell before you build big. Get your MVP, your minimal viable product, done. Get it out there, get it in front of people, and start selling so that you can actually get into the market and not waste your time by building too much before you sell it. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time.